What's up, everybody? Welcome to our first Talking Talent live session for 2023. I'm Jay Rusin, Head of Marketing at Video My Job, and I'm here with our guest today, the one and only Quila Cervelli, employer brand expert / geek / OG. Welcome, Quila. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks. I like being called an OG. I haven't been called that in a long time. Thanks.
And do you want to kick us off with the acknowledgement of country for today?
Yeah, so I'd like to welcome everyone to the potty, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are all linking in from today. Whether you are in Vic like we are or across the country, thanks so much for joining us.
Cool. Thank you. So a couple of announcements and call outs to kick us off. So Quila Cervelli, who's not only our guest for today, but as you might have seen our announcements on LinkedIn and from Quila herself, is going to be joining us as co-host for the next 6 months while our usual host, Brit, is on maternity leave. Honestly, I'm not sure if she's listening, but we are definitely missing her already. But we have the pleasure of having Quila on as co-host for the next 6 months. So that's great. The other call out as well is for the new season this year, for those of you who tuned in last year, really going to focus in on all things activation. And today we're going to talk more about what that is and try to unpack that topic a bit to kick off the year. A couple of other call outs too. Talking Talent newsletter. Often we get people reaching out to us after the session for a recording. So the best way to stay in touch for those recordings and upcoming sessions is the Talking Talent newsletter. So we'll drop a link in the chat of how to get access to that. And then one last one is those of you who are not familiar with Riverside. It's not quite like Zoom. It's really good for recording the final product that we'll share afterwards. But importantly, you get a little bit of functionality. You won't see the speaker maximized on the screen automatically, but you do have, if you just click around on the images on the screen for myself and Quila, you can kind of control what's the best view for you, and it's going to be easy for you to join along for the conversation. So that's it for the announcements. One other one before I forget to is we've got some giveaway kits, which is called the Kick Into Gear kit, a bunch of kind of really cool branded stuff, including socks and jelly beans and some other video tools. Throughout the session, we'll keep an eye out for the best question in the chat. So give it a shot, get some questions in there that you'd like to ask Quila. We'll let you know who is the best one and who will be up for one of those giveaways at the end of the session. So let's jump into it, Quila. So I'll open up the conversation with I grabbed a little bit of help from ChatGPT because AI, and it's 2023. I don't want to get left behind. I work in marketing, so I thought I'd get some help and kick things off with a question that I came up with, and I've got ChatGPT to give us a few different alternatives for the multiple choice answers. So, what is your number one pet hate when it comes to employer branding? And this is what ChatGPT has put forward for you to choose from. Is it those cliched phrases and buzzwords? Is it using stock images and generic language in the messaging? Inconsistent employer brand across all communication channels? Surely that's got to be one of them, potentially. Focusing too much on recruitment and not enough on retention of current employees, or just flat out ignoring employee feedback and concerns. So one of those or something entirely altogether.
If I thought I was upset that I didn't get any jelly beans sent to my house yet, now I'm really upset because all those options are like all pet hates of mine. But I think the stock images one bothers me the most because it's so easy to create your own content. And we'll talk about that through this season, how people overcook EB all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really just as easy as having conversations, taking pictures, video with your mobile phone. So yeah, it's probably the stock images one because that's just an easy win.
Yep. Nice. And then also option F is not enough jelly beans being given away.
Yeah, not enough jelly beans. What the hell? I mean, am I a part of this or not?
All right. So let's jump into the conversation. The first topic is just to help us get to know a bit about you and your perspective on activation and lead that on to the next topic as well. So do you want to just tell us in your own words a bit about your background and experience and journey into EB for those of you who haven't crossed paths with you so far?
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Quila. A lot of my friends and colleagues call me Q. It's just easier than when you see it spelled out. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is not being able to pronounce people's names correctly. So it's Quila if you like a challenge, Q if you want to get up close and personal with me. So my story is I'm obviously from New York, hence the accent. Kind of like started my career in sales, turned into customer retention, digital marketing, moved to Australia and really started my EB journey at Australia Post, working on a project. I was on the social media team, but Rebecca Houghton, if she's on the call, love you, personal hero. She kind of tapped me on the shoulder to work on this project called EVP, Employer Value Proposition. I basically sat in on a number of focus groups with our employees, understood why they chose Australia Post as a great place to work. After about 6 months, when the consolidation happened, with all the data that we got from the focus groups, she tapped me on the shoulder again and said, "Hey, there's this JD for recruitment marketing specialist. Do you think it reads well?" And I was like, yeah. And she's like, "You dummy. I'm asking you, do you want the job?" So, fast forward a few months, it was a secondment that turned into a full-time role, which then after a few years turned into a team of 5. I've then gone on to build the team at RMIT, and now I'm at Sportsbet. In the last few months, my roles actually expanded to not just be employer brand, but I am the employer brand and diversity, equity, and inclusion manager. So that's a mouthful. But definitely, if you tune in over the next 6 months, we'll be talking about all things EB, talent, EVP, DE&I, and not just, methods, but how to put it into practice. So really excited.
Yeah, nice. And yeah, it's kind of like a bit of a trend we've seen where it's some people like yourself come from that kind of core marketing skill set and digital marketing, and then transition into this space, which can be really handy. And then you've kind of got the other side where, like, some of the TA teams, especially more recently, it's like, well, we can't afford to hire a dedicated role, so we're going to add that responsibility into the team, and then somebody has to pick it up from there. So it sounds like you're much more coming from that marketing and digital background into the space.
Yeah, marketing and also having a dedicated team. Um, I see a lot of the time that talent teams make this a project, a secondment, a way to upskill one of their key players on their talent team. And there's no hate towards that. I love that. But yeah, there's two camps that you can sit in based on resourcing, availability, and also giving somebody an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, cool. And what are you working on right now? Like, what are some of the big things on your mind for this year ahead?
Yeah, so when it comes to the employer branding part, we went through a massive year of growth last year. Sportsbet, part of an international brand, Flutter Group, but we managed the recruitment for 2 brands as part of that, which is Sportsbet and FanDuel. About 350 hires, majority of that in the tech space. To any of our tech recruiters out there, you know what 2022 felt like. It was hard. We're all vying for the same talent with, trying to show how we're each a bit different than the next company that's down Burke and Collins Street. So massive year of growth last year. This year, I think it's getting down to basics and getting to work on a lot of those projects that we didn't have time for or headspace for last year. Some of the projects are taking things from, phase 1. We put out a really kick-ass referral program. Now, how can we make it even better? We had an employee ambassador program using tools like the MarTech or Employer Brandwagon. You might have heard of either of those names. They're the same company. So thinking about how, we've launched it, we created 48 awesome pieces of content, put that out to the world, but how do we better utilize that community to start sharing on our behalf? And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the episode. What else? So from a DE&I perspective, launching our reconciliation action plan. And then we've got a series of events over the next year called our Thrive series. And that's enabling our employees to tell their stories, what makes them individuals, what makes them unique, and really honing in on that DE&I space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a few things. I feel
Just
like
a few,
there's a
yeah.
lot more.
And I'm curious, on, like, from an external perspective, like some of the other, I suppose, challenges that are cross industry, like that a lot of organisations are facing. Like, what is it that's kind of coming up in the conversations right now for the year at Sportsbet in the work you're doing, and things that that you may not have figured out how you're going to respond to it or address it? Like, what are some of those things that you quite haven't solved for yet?
I think that's a great question. And it's also what I'm most excited about. So, what I should have added about what we're doing for this year is we're doing an employer brand refresh. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is we are a polarizing industry. Everyone knows that. You either are into wagering or you're not, and we're okay with that. I think also, no matter how you cut it, we're in wagering, entertainment, tech, they're all male dominated industries. So how do we combat that for the gender piece, specifically in DE&I? But when we talk about the brand refresh, our consumer brand definitely speaks to a main target market, which is mostly our customers are male between certain age groups. How do we change that, tweak it slightly so that way it mirrors a little bit more of our employer brand, but also what our employees look like, feel like, sounds like, where they're from, what their backgrounds are. When you look at our employees, it's a complete rainbow of humans, and it doesn't necessarily mirror our consumer base. So how do we make sure that our new tone of voice for our employer brand pays homage to our consumer brand, but also that the relationship works the other way too? So we're lifting our game a little bit in terms of DE&I. Really exciting piece of work. So
yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. And so, yeah, as I said before, we myself and the team at Video My Job, we're totally wrapped to have you coming on board as guest host with Talking Talent over the next 6 months. But, to say that you're a pretty busy person is an understatement. I mean, not just to mention the list of activities you're doing at work and then in your personal life as a parent and things like that as well. So what motivated you? Do you want to share what motivated you to invest your time to come on to come onto the program? And is it the sweet neon sign that we've normally got in the background that some might know us for? Is it somebody to bribe you? Did you lose a bet?
yeah, all of that.
Noticed
I'm
the
actually,
pun on sports bet there, but yeah.
yeah, I am a fool for a neon sign. Like I go jelly leg for that. No, I've been a long time user of Video My Job. I think we got pitched by Dave Machaka like 6 years ago at Australia Post when you just launched in Australia, 7 years maybe. And I've been a user ever since. Really love the tech and huge advocate for it. Love the team. And my baby daddy also works for Video My Job. So we'll announce the elephant in the room that he also works for Video My Job. So there's probably some ethical issues there. No, just kidding. Long time user, long time lover of Video My Job. Yeah. So thanks for having me.
Cool. And just a reminder here as well, I think we've got a couple of questions coming through, but yeah, definitely drop your questions in the chat as we go. So I will continue on with some of the other ones here as well. So yeah, as I said before at the start, and something we spoke about a couple of times before, when we're working on how do we get you onto the program and what will we focus on. We surfaced this focus around activation in the context of employer brand and employee advocacy and messaging more broadly. So we chose that focus because we've seen there's a lot of great help, really great stuff going on focus on developing that message and the importance of that being true and unique to your culture and EVP, whatever that might be, but not quite enough on really how to land that message in the market, especially if you don't have that marketing kind of background that you've had or have that dedicated skill in the team. So do you want to share a little bit about kind of why that focus on activation resonates with you personally?
Yeah, I think like time and resources is everything, right? Like you can learn the theory, we can talk about the theory until we're blue in the face. And so many conferences that we go to, you go and you might learn 1, 2, 3 things, and you give a whole day of your life to whatever conference or workshop that you're going to, and to only really pull out 1, 2, or 3 things if you're lucky, that's not good enough as an exchange of time. What I promise you in this series is that we will teach you about activation and how to do it simply, low cost resource, low time resource to get the biggest bang for your buck at the end. I think we're all busy, and unfortunately, we don't have that many resources to throw at employer brand. I think there are going to be a lot of people, and you can type in the chat if you've just been given employer brand as kind of like a nice to have or a piece of project work or a way for you to upskill and kind of branch out in your role. So I'd love to see some more people in the chat saying, yeah, that's me, or, no, I'm dedicated. Just tell me a little bit more about who you are, so we can make sure that the activation makes most sense for you. So we'll always start with a little bit of theory, but I really want to give you the tools so that way you can get off this call your lunchtime and go and put things into place quite easily.
Yeah, it's such a key call out around the resources and the budget side of things. Literally, the last 2 guests we had on the program, this topic came up. So one was Helen Durkin over at Microsoft in Europe. We said to her, she's talking about not a big budget. Well, how many digits are we talking? Like 4, 5, 6. She's like, no digits. Like that's where they're starting. They're
Yeah,
starting
like
from
zero,
zero.
like no budget.
I'm like, that's crazy. I mean, obviously over in marketing, it's just raining money, and we're no, just kidding. But we have more than no digits. Put it that way. And then who was the other one? It was Lauren at EY. They were talking about how some of the awards they've won last year were clearly the grittier pieces of work where they had to get their hands dirty and figure out how to make it happen on quite a small budget. And that turned out to be the better work that they actually put out to market, and it was more engaging. So yeah, it's a super key call out there, and something that keeps coming up when we have these conversations. So yeah, and I think the other call I want to make on in terms of what, in addition to what you're saying around what we're trying to do with this season as well, is the way we think about talking talent is we're not just trying to find the biggest names in the industry to kind of further amplify those voices there, but what we really want to do is find those voices from the community who have a point of view and perspective on these topics, and bring them on and try to get those learnings shared more broadly across the community, rather than just kind of further amplifying things that are already there. So yeah, if you do have any suggestions for guests of people that have some good perspective and should have their story shared around activation, we'd love to get some extra names, and we'll definitely check those out as potential guests as well. So
Yeah, Jay, just before you go to the next
yeah,
thing, I wanted to say that like I love talking to the doers.
yeah, that's it.
So many times the leaders, like the GM level, are the ones that get invited onto the stage, but that's not where like the juicy work is done. And it's often us that are prepping the notes for that higher level to go and speak on the stage. So we want to talk to the doers. If you know of anyone great, just pop it into the chat too, or message us after the session too.
Yep, totally. Good call. So I might go through a couple of questions before we jump into the next topic. So we've got one here from Jared. So what are your thoughts on RAPs, and what advice would you give to employers thinking about embarking on a RAP journey? So this will be a new acronym. I don't know this one yet. You can fill me.
So that's your Reconciliation Action Plan, and that's how you honor the Indigenous members of your staff, but also, attract more Indigenous members of the community to want to come and work at your workplace. So there's two parts of a RAP. There's, your action plan, and then your employment plan, which comes afterwards. So my thoughts on the RAP is engage Reconciliation Australia immediately. They will help you do a bit of an audit, understand where you are as a business, and then kind of lay out your plan. Also realize that your plan is a 10-year plus plan. It's not, your normal plan that you make in a business is usually like 12, 18, 24 months when you're working on a project. This is not a project. This is a forever thing, a commitment. So yeah, so my first piece of advice is get in touch with Reconciliation Australia. They'll analyze your business and get you started.
Yeah, perfect. That's a really good one. Yeah, I'm learning along the way here as well, and that would be, Paul. That's a good one for the newsletter. We'll make sure we put a call out there for that, for other people thinking about that as well. We've got another question here from Sarah. So thanks, Quila. We're just kicking off our EVP piece, which is a really big education piece for the manufacturing business. I've joined in for, oh, sorry. I didn't read the whole thing. It's just a
She's
comment
introducing
there.
herself. Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Very exciting point. I love getting started with the EVP. I think that was one of my favorite things that I did last year. So if you want to connect, I don't know which Sarah you are. I might know you, I might not know you. So introduce yourself, connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you need any help or advice, ask questions.
Cool. There's another one here from Gavin. I might hold that one over. I think it's going to be a good one just to bounce off the back of the next topic as well. So, okay, let's jump into topic number 2, which is just, trying to unpack this topic about activation. What are we really talking about here? A little bit of the good, bad, the ugly, if we can get there. So, Keela, do you want to provide a bit about kind of your definition for the concept of activation from that in-house practitioner perspective, and just a bit about your philosophy on the topic?
Yeah, I think like anybody that has ever been one of my leaders, like any of my bosses, always, I think it's like to my detriment, but also I think it's a good thing that I oversimplify everything. I see things as like, what is the quickest route to success, and what can I do myself, or what can my team do, instead of outsourcing it. For activation, I think of things in phases. So what can we do this year that just gets things off the ground? So I think of that as phase 1. And then now that we've got this well-oiled machine, how do we advance it next year? And I think that's just kind of a good way for you to build your strategy, not have, suffer from burnout, at least not too much, but also like not bite off too much that you can't chew. Like I mentioned before, activation is key, and just making sure that you've got enough resources to get things done is often what stops us. I think a great example of how I've put that into play is our employee advocacy program. So like I mentioned before, we've got the MarTech, we've onboarded like 169 employees over the last year with the help of Sim Strawn, who is my leader at, I was about to say Australia Post, at Sportsbet. I forget where I work. So we have a number of employees. We've pumped out the content. We put it on our LinkedIn, our Instagram. We are winning awards for it. We're getting a lot of recognition. A lot of our external partners see our stories and they share it, but we're not using our employees. Like, it's so silly. So we've got phase 1 done. Something that would take me 5 minutes to do, which is go into the platform, send a note to our current employee advocates and say, hey, we've just published a story. Would you mind also publishing this on your social channels? Something that would take me 5 minutes. I didn't do all of last year. So don't kick yourself if you haven't done everything perfectly. Like, even me, who's like speaking out as, a semi-expert in the area, still doesn't do 100%, like there's still room for improvement. So don't kick yourself. That's my plan this year, is that I will be activating our employee advocates a little bit better. And so that's just one example of how I've screwed up.
Yeah. And now we've
Just
got
like
it on
everyone
tape
else.
too, so we can make sure
Yeah, we got it
the
on tape.
commitment is well
Yeah.
publicized for Sportsbet.
Lock me up and throw away the key.
Yeah. And when I'm curious from this perspective as well. So like when I think about marketing, particularly on like the channels and the comms side of like how do we get the message out to the audience, kind of what I've found and learned in my time in marketing is there's usually a few obvious bets, and then the rest is very nuanced, like super nuanced, especially if like you do something industry focused like what we do. From that like activation perspective, in your view, like how much, like what's your kind of take on like what are the must-haves in terms of those channels or touch points that should be set and on point when it comes to the message versus like how much of it is really nuanced depending on the segment of talent or the type of roles or those skills that are the priority or harder to fill for the business?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to answer it a little bit differently, and you're probably going to kill me for that. But to make sure that we're giving people the tools that they need to go and hit the ground running, I'm going to answer it just slightly differently by giving an example. So when I do EVP research, yes, you can go out to the big companies to help you. You can have marketing research companies come and help you. But EVP research, employer value proposition, is literally asking 5 questions to employees. And I'll talk a little bit more about the segmentation in a moment. EVP questions that you ask is, what attracted you to come work at the company that you work for? So you get to understand whether that was 6 weeks ago or 6 years ago, what attracted them to the business. More importantly, what keeps you here, especially with the climate of the last 3 years, understanding why somebody wakes up every day and still chooses to come work there. That's huge. If you're thinking about leaving, why is that? And it's okay. Like, let them know that it's totally normal every day to question whether or not this is the right place for you. So if they're thinking about leaving or have thought about leaving in the past, that it's a safe space to talk about. If so, where to? Because that where to is going to help you benchmark your company versus the ones that are, tapping your people on the shoulder for benefits, culture, how they present themselves, their employer brand. So that helps you kind of benchmark where you are against them and gives you a little bit more wiggle room of identifying your priorities for the next year. And then when you have them there, ask them if they would mind being an employee advocate for you. They oftentimes in EVP conversations like treat you like their therapist. So you get to hear a little bit more of their personal and professional stories. You've already captured some things that they might want to talk about. So now ask them to talk about it externally. So that's EVP research. The reason why I went through that like longer response is because that's now your opportunity to do your segmentation. That's where you meet new people. So you have that one-on-one conversation with them. You build that rapport. You can see whether they identify as male, female, or other. So you got to like kind of understand some of their demographics. They've spoken about some of their personal life, so you know if they're a parent, single, which point in life they're in, those kinds of personal kinds of conversations and points of reference. You know what team they're in. So it's not just that they're on the tech team, but that they're a software engineer, that they're junior or senior. And these are all things like if you think about an Excel spreadsheet, I've got all of my questions in an Excel spreadsheet, but I also have some of these key identifiers in my row, in my columns as well. So that way, when I do want to segment based on tone of voice or EVP messaging, I don't just do it based on team, which is great to get that messaging for your job ads, your career site. But if I want to know what female, mothers who are software engineers who work part-time, what their EVP is, I can do that. I can splice the data really easily. So that was a really long response, but did that answer your question about segmentation?
Yeah, nice. So
Maybe.
yeah,
I don't
so I think
know.
what you're saying is like then you can use that retrospectively to go on. You're saying you then filter that based off different characteristics and kind of see what you got from those groups as like a lightweight segmentation of the of the people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think like it's like super simple way to be able to segment and get those key messages. Um, Christy just asked a really interesting question. And I think now might be a good time
Go
to
for it.
answer it. So Christy works in higher ed. I worked in higher ed previously as well, so I'm really familiar. You're embarking on your EVP journey. Super exciting. Focus groups are happening next week. Good luck. How would you recommend setting the scene for brand advocates in this space? Just ask. I think the way that we kind of split out EVP at RMIT was we had the professional staff, which like is where we work, and then you've got your academia. I think in both areas they're really focused on that mentorship and like seeing is being. Like if you can see it, you can be it. So asking them if they want to tell their story, especially on the academic side, they're really proud of their work. They're oftentimes the experts in their fields internationally. So just, kind of like pumping them up and like, if you get to tell your story or if you get to talk about this project or this topic that you're working on and how you achieved what you achieve to a younger market, there's just so much benefit to it. So pumping them up often helps in higher ed.
Yeah, nice. And back on that list of questions before, do you have to be working under the job title of employer brand to run that project?
No, you
Didn't think so.
don't. Yeah.
Cool. We've got. We might as well keep rolling with a couple of questions. It looks like it's sparked a few thoughts from people here. So we've got Janina. Quila, do you suggest using an agency for any of the other EVP employer branding stages before activation journey? I think that says.
Yeah, like I have worked with many in the past. Currently, we have worked with some, like on a number of different HR people and culture projects. They've influenced a lot of the EVP work, but then now we've taken it in-house for this portion. So yes, and if you need any recommendations of ones that I've worked with, like please just slide into my DMs, or I'm even happy to share. I don't know what's allowed, but I'm happy to share who I've worked with.
Cool. We've got Paula here as well. I'm keen to understand the list of questions you ask each area in the business to get your EVP started. So, do you want to take that now, or maybe that's something we can grab and share
Yeah.
afterwards?
So, Paula, I've just shared the questions that I ask for EVP research. So, when we get the recording, it was at like probably minute 20 or 22. So, you can definitely zoom back into that. But if you're asking about like how it influenced to get EVP projects started, I don't know if that's what you're asking, but I can answer that if that is what you're asking. So, let me know, Paula. Hi, Paula, by the way. Oh, yes, that's what you're asking. Okay. So, generally, what I do is I go to leadership team meetings. So, whether that could be like 15 leadership team groups. And what I do is I go with the recruiter and the HRBP. We go to their normal LT meeting and I educate them on what employer value proposition is and what EB is. Oftentimes, when I come into a business, I'm the first of EB to ever come. So there's a big education piece about what I do and how I support the talent team and their hiring initiatives. So that's first thing. I talk about the questions that I'm going to be asking and the benefit to understanding the responses to them. So, for example, how we would couple those responses with employee feedback or employee surveys. At Sportsbet, we do it twice a year. So it's usually a really good check-in point to say, they said this in your My Say results, but then they've also said this in my one-on-one conversations. And so this is how we couple those two data points to improve the employee experience or the attraction experience. So that's just one example. They are the ones that usually tell me who to go and talk to for EVP. I want a mixture of tenure. I don't want senior leaders. I want a mixture of gender, experience. I want a mixture. I want a wide array, and representative of the amount of people on your team. So I usually do about like 10% of the team. And then when I do the EVP research, I then go back to their next LT meeting, go through the consolidated data. These are the key themes. These are your EVP pillars, and make sure that there aren't any red flags. Like, does everyone in the room agree that this sounds right? And then once we get there that they agree, we then embed. So that's when we start activating the messaging across all of the assets. Hopefully that answered your question.
Cool. We've got another one from Ben here. That's a thank you from Paula. We got another one here from Ben of in reference to that EVP kind of messaging development there. How much should be aspirational, talking about where you're going to versus where you're at currently?
I don't know. I like the idea of being like super honest about like where a company is at or where a team is at or where a specific project is at. So like how that looks in a job ad is have just launched AWS. We still have another 12 months on our roadmap. And that's why we need you to come and help us bring us from point A to point B. Instead of being like, we've got AWS, we're best in class, or like we want to be best in class, blah, blah, blah. Like I think people see through that and they want to know what their skin is in the game, like what contribution they will be making. And that makes it a little bit more personalized. I love like a little bit of aspiration on a career site to talk about what the vision is for the company, because I think that's a big selling point, but just not like airy fairy. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that answers. And if that's Ben Roberts, hi. And if it's not Ben Roberts, also hi.
Nice. Okay, so we've spoken a bit about your kind of focus and philosophy. It is him around a simplistic approach. We've spoken about a really practical kind of hands-on view of how to bring out some messaging. Then one of the other questions we had for you here was around the approach to activation. So then you talked about, okay, then implementing that into the content and different touch points as well. So what are you thinking like at the moment in terms of how activation has evolved over time versus where is it at right now? Like what are those kind of assets or pieces of content that actually do resonate with and are in the formats or mediums that candidates want to engage with these days?
It's a hard one. I think as practitioners, you've got to look at the data, see where the volume of people have come through in the last year, and then prioritize. So if you know that the majority of your applications or hires, if you think about it as a sales funnel, you're bringing people up at the top, and then you obviously want to hire them, and that's at the very bottom of the funnel. You want to look and see where you're attracting people and what's brought you the most success, and probably prioritize those. For most of the businesses that I've worked for, that's your career site, it's LinkedIn, it's Seek, and then referrals. So that's generally what we prioritize to make sure that your employer branding is aligned. We then, in that next phase, start thinking about the Glassdoor, Indeed, some of the other, like review sites, and just making sure that you've kind of like knocked those off. Obviously, if you've got more people on your team, you can divide and conquer. But yeah, look at the data, like look and see, go into your ATS and see what your attraction channels have been and what's been most successful for you, and then pick those off as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, totally. And then, I think keen to hear your perspective as well on like what are some of the role model brands who are activating their story really well, and what is it about their method that you see as compelling?
Okay, so you're gonna think I'm like, this might be a standard answer for a lot of people, but I really adore adore is kind of like a big word. What Kohl's has done in the last, I want to say like year, 18 months, their segmentation is awesome. So if you go to their career site, don't go now, stay here, stay with us. They have created candidate journeys really well. So if you're going in store, that's one journey. If you're going to corporate, that's another journey. And then when you click on store, if you're going to the bakery, you get to hear more information about that. If you're, doing checkout, that's another. If you're doing stockroom, it's another one. So highly segmented based on where you're going to be working. I love that they talk about some of their partnerships and what they stand for. So, for example, like they're being part of Pride or DE&I, or what their their reconciliation action plan is. Like, they're just routes to get all of those informations depending on which community you are a part of, and then where you want to see yourself in. I love that. What I love most though is their activation. I don't know if it's because I'm friends or in the network with a lot of their recruiters and their LT in talent, but when they post something to LinkedIn, there's one look and feel. And I think that is just so clean, and they all sing it from the rooftops and the same song. And that's cool to me. There's nothing worse than, well, coming from like a branding and kind of like marketing background, when you see just like the wrong logo. And like, look, we're all like, it happens everywhere. So it's not just like, I'm not saying that like that doesn't happen at sports, but it happens all the time. But when you see the wrong logo or wrong link or whatever, there, different numbers, we're representing 1,100 employees, but actually 700 employees, just like the incongruencies grind me, but Kohl's has nailed it. One other, oh yeah. Hi, Sai. And then another brand obviously is Canva. Like, I don't know what it's like to actually work there. I've never worked there. Know some people on the talent team that are incredible humans, but the way that they represent it externally, man, looks like the best place to work. And it helps that they've got the creative side nailed, obviously, with their tool. They make everyone look like a hero. So really, really impressive employer brand, and they make it seem really easy, which is nice. Yep.
Okay, cool. Sorry, you might have heard that noise. I've got a slight technical challenge right now as my laptop battery's going flat. So I'm going to shout out to the team in the room to help me connect some power
Ooh.
while we keep going. But just got to get
Okay.
that fixed up.
That's okay. I've got the questions too, so we're not done. Let me get down to that. So he wanted to ask me do you agree that most organizations are not activating well? And that there's a message or a story that probably exists of why people work at an organization, but we don't really capitalize on the full potential? And the answer is yes. There's a question here from Rob, which is great. It's like, once you've determined what your EVP is, what's been the best way to announce it internally and externally? And I think that question kind of aligns with what I was about to be asked. Yeah, like, I'm going to admit I haven't always activated EVP well internally. I think you think about your assets, you think about, your career site and getting that done externally. Yes, you might have gone to your leadership team meetings to tell them what their unique EVP is, but have you actually sat down all of your employees and said, hey, we're launching this project, like, or we're launching our employer value proposition. This is what you all told us, or a segment of you all told us. And this is what we're doing out in market. What I did at Australia Post was we made a little bit more of like a fair about it. So based on the team, you would come and, you get your professional LinkedIn profile photo. You then go and get your profile on LinkedIn reviewed by somebody like from LinkedIn. You got to interact with Video My Job. Hey, Jay. We're answering Rob's question. So we you got to interact with Video My Job, and then our referral program you got to learn about, and then you learn about your EVP for your team. So you remember all the great messaging that your teammates shared with us. So that's how we activated it internally. We're kind of starting that at Sportsbet. So what that looks like, not quite sure yet. But we go big with our campaigns from a consumer perspective. So we're hoping to go really big with this too, like blue sky, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we left off. I did dropped off, but yeah, the question, we've got a couple of questions left from what we're going to cover off on this topic. So So the last one was around, off the back of those examples around Coles and Canva and things like that. Typically, most organizations are not activating well. And so what I mean by that is, like, even when they've got that great message or story that does probably exist about why people work there, but they're not capitalizing on the true potential of that in how they communicate in a way that's compelling for candidates. So yeah, what's your take on that one?
Um, so activation, I think like that's the hard part is I often hear from people, oh, I've just done my EVP. Um, we're talking to our marketing team to get our career site done, but like what else do I need to do? Or like how do I consolidate all this data into messaging? And I think that's really where you start to need to require marketing or copywriting help. And no better than working with your internal team, I think, is a really, to keep the brand message synced, your tone of voice synced. No one's going to know your business better than internal. But if you are really lucky and fortunate to be able to work with an external provider for your EVP and activation, just making sure that you do have internal marketing people in the room as well to kind of just be that last point of check, to make sure that that activation is on brand. Yeah.
Cool. And then do you have any other advice you want to share for kind of the talent or EB folks who do want to work through that in the year ahead? Apart from tune into the sessions for the rest of the year as we unpack it further. But yeah, any other advice you want to share?
Yeah, use your networks. Like I'm so tired of like silos, whether it's in your business or in our industry. We are like one big love fest, this talent industry. So like pop up a post on LinkedIn, say, I'm working on this. Does anyone have any advice? You can message me. If you're in employer brand, we've got an employer brand little LinkedIn group where we just ask questions like, hey, have you seen this before? Or has anyone worked with this brand before? Blah, blah, blah. And it's a sharing community. So do not be shy. Let's use each other.
Awesome. Okay, we made it. We made it through the glitch, and we're back on track. So thank you so much, Keela. That brings us to the end of my kind of questions I had to try to unpack and get to know a bit about you and your take on activation. Looks like it really resonated with a lot of the audience there, and some awesome questions coming through there as well. So just quick shout out to Paul if you want to go back through the questions and figure out who's the best one, who's going to win. But in the meanwhile, we've got this. We still got to come up with a name for it. We've got this program where the person who was the last guest gets to put forward a question to the next guest. Sometimes they know who it is, sometimes they don't. So we're going to bring up a little clip of Helen Durkin onto the screen here. Paul, are you going to do the share or you want me to do it? Yeah. We're going to bring that up and play the question that Helen had for you. And then after you answer, you get to pick what your question is for the next guest, which you'll be there to ask this time. So you'll be along for the next one anyway. But yeah, let's hear what Helen's question was.
Okay. So my question, Quila, is obviously because you're in employer brand like myself, what do you think employer brand is going to look like for 2023? Obviously, we are still coming out of the pandemic and then have gone into an even more difficult economic climate. What do you think the key trends are going to be as practitioners that we're going to need to focus on? Are they going to be new things, or is it going to be just going back to the foundational basics of how we roll out EVP? I would love to know.
Okay, so you might think that my answer is really boring, but I think foundation is the thing. I think like, you get to work on some projects that clean your backyard and get you ready for whatever the hell the economy is going to throw at us in 2023, 2024. Don't know if that's going to be good or bad. I'm a perpetual positive human being, so I think it'll be good. But I think like last year was just really hard on talent. There's so much growth, then so many layoffs, then growth, then layoffs. And that didn't leave a lot of room to get things done right. I think it's going to be a heart-led approach. You'll see a lot of people signing up for things like Circle Back Initiative and doing the right thing by humans. When you invest in yourself to apply for a role, that is incredibly emotional, and just treating people right. And I think that this year is going to be a lot of that like human-centered approach to getting things done. If you leave people feeling shitty about themselves after a process, shame on you, but also this is the year to get it right and treat people with some respect after the last few years that we've all had.
Amazing, thank you. And now we'll cue the tape and we'll grab your question for the next guest. So we don't have them booked yet, so you'll just have to put forward what it is you want to learn and hear about from whoever the next guest is that comes on next month.
Yeah. My question for the next guest is, who would you like to see on Talking Talent Live that is not a senior leader? So that's the caveat. Who would you like to have be part of our show so they can do some of our talent or some of our recruitment for us? Lazy.
There's somebody on here that says, we can hear you, Brit. I don't know if that's Brit, like as in Video on My Job co-host Brit, but she summed up your answer before around the year of leading with values. Love it. That's a good headline. Okay, cool. Well, thanks again to our live audience, and welcome once again to our new co-host, Quila Cervelli. Paul, have we got a winner?
I think it's Jared.
Jared. There you go, Jared. So awesome. Do you know Jared? Quila, do we know you, Jared?
Yeah. So lovely to see you, and thanks for asking such great questions.
Cool. All right, Jared, we'll get in touch and we'll figure out how to get your sweet Video on My Job Kick into Gear package over to you as soon as we can. So again, if you'd like to be kept up to date on all our upcoming live sessions, as well as the recordings afterwards, make sure you jump on LinkedIn, follow us there, or subscribe to the Talking Talent newsletter. The link's in the chat. So we will catch you all soon.
Thanks for having me. See ya.